Hello and welcome to the Coach Your Kids Right podcast. I am Skip LaCour, and I'm so glad you are joining me today. Hey, on this podcast, I want to talk about parent-coach dynamics, the complexities of coaching your own child. I want to talk about, should you coach your own child? What are the pros? What are the cons of doing so? What are some things to think about when you are going through this journey with your child? All right. This podcast is for the parents of very young children, 5 to 8 years old. You're going through this whole sports journey for the first time. Maybe you participated in sports, you have good experience or bad experience, and you want to make it better for your child. Maybe you didn't participate in sports at all, and that's why you're here. You want to have your son participate, excel at sports on a level that you weren't able to. All right, this is for you, especially if this is your first time through. You don't have, your child doesn't have older siblings who you went through this process. And maybe you developed some great strategies, empowering habits and beliefs, and you want to carry those over to your child. Or maybe you didn't do it quite right, and now you've come up with other theories. But really, although I think anybody can benefit from this conversation, this is really for the parents. It's the first time around, getting you to think about things that you never really would have thought about. And now they're implanted in your head by these discussions, by these podcasts. And so the very first minute you encounter this during your child's fitness journey, you'll have more perspective already. And that's what I hope to do. This is for parents who want to give their kids the best chance for success from the very start in their sports journeys and earn the confidence of doing well in sports, the confidence that they can take in all areas of life, personal development. That's where I come from, and that's a little bit about me. You got to know who you are listening to, whose perspective, and you can balance that out with yours. So should you be a coach for your child? Right? Should you be a coach? I've obviously thought about this. Again, my kids have just gone through this 5 to 8, the start, and there's a lot of observations. But I want to just start off with my biased opinion because I thought this all out and I've come to conclusions, and I have a certain belief what worked well and maybe some other things to think about now I've gone through what you're going through. All right. So I have decided I do not want to coach my kids' team. All right, I don't want to coach my kids' team. All right, I guess I should make that clear. Coaching your child, I mean coaching your child's team, the entire team, if I didn't make that clear, right? And the biggest reason why I made that decision was because, I don't want to try to be even in my focus and attention to all 12 children, right? Certainly not at this young age. I want to give it all to my kids, and I feel compelled to appear to be not be biased and not give extra attention to my kids and spread it all out. Forget about the playing time, what positions they play. That's a whole different topic. But where would my attention go? I decided it was best for me if I intended the practices and I focused on my kids and I gave them feedback, pros, cons, things to look for after observing them solely, just them. I mean, I guess I watch all the other kids, but I'm totally focused on my kids, and I know I would want to be so biased and so focused on my child. It would be so obvious, and I didn't want to be of a disservice to the other parents and kids, right? So that was the biggest reason why I decided I wouldn't be a coach. Now, there are, and again, the sports aren't quite so serious in the very start, but all these parents, we all love our kids, and we all have biases about what's fair and not fair, and daddy ball, you'll hear about that. You've already probably heard about that. That's always going to come to play. And whether you think you're being fair and unbiased or not, it's other people's opinion, and you're going to be caught up in the daddy ball thing. All right, so a lot of things to think about. I didn't want to be in the middle of all that. So when I made that decision, I knew that I couldn't influence. So if my kids got maybe overlooked, or they got displaced, or even the language, that some parents use, and again, God bless them, their hearts. Look, at this level, if a parent, just for whatever their reasons, they want to volunteer their own time, this is all volunteer, God bless them. I mean, really, they should have certain perks and advantage for all that time that they invest absolutely free. Somebody's got to do it. And probably, in some leagues and some organizations, some sports, they desperately need coaches. So, God bless them for volunteering their time. All right. But it comes with pros and cons that you should know going in. All right. And it's not what's in your heart or how objective you think you are. You're being judged by, all the other parents. And, I just didn't, I just didn't want to be in the middle of that drama and not have control of it. And then, put it on my big shoulders, that's fine. But the kids at home, they're going to feel that. They're going to feel that pressure, and they're, even if you try to hide it, I can tell there's some coaches that are in the middle of, this type of situation, being judged by parents. And I think the kids know it. That's unfortunate. I didn't want to, I knowing that you're not going to please all the parents as a coach. And I just think it's unfortunate for the kids because they didn't ask well, maybe they did, but, they shouldn't be involved in adult things, judgment, politics, their opinion of what's politics. The kids shouldn't be involved, right? So, look, I have been like an assistant coach, never took the full role of anything serious and involved. And I can tell you that it's great being on the field, right? I can pick out certain things, and it's great. It's rewarding, right? Team, the whole concept. If that's what you want to do, I decided that I really didn't want to come from that angle. But I know of all the great things. I'm just kind of telling you, my biased look before we even throw out the questions and give you the things to think about. And this is my reasoning. And when I made that decision, I can't, be there to coach my kid in the middle of the game, tell him to, keep his head up and those type of things. I mean, unless you're at this young age, you're talking from the crowd, which is another, it's another challenge, right? Are you going to play by those rules? That's probably the best thing, is go to those games and don't say one thing from, the crowd to your kid. Let the coaches do all of it, even 5 to 8 years old. I mean, that would be the best thing. I'm going to raise my hand right now. I don't follow that rule. I try to follow that rule, but I don't. Right? I'm just being honest with you. Right? You got to understand my biased point of view. Everybody has a biased point of view, and if I'm going to be doing this, you got to know where my bias comes. At least the ones that I recognize, right? But so if you can't be on the field to make those adjustments, to be there to make in-game mental adjustments or whatever it is, and I'm not even really it's about the mental part of the game, the challenges, the ups and downs. That's what I would love to be a coach to help my kids through. More than anything, more than hey, pick up your shoulder, do this or do that. But I guess it's all tied in, right? So when I made that decision, I said, well, how are you going to give your kids the best chance if you're not the coach? Not even saying I would be the best coach, right? I said I have to work so hard with them at home. I would have to work so hard so that, they're not going to get overlooked. They're not going to have a bad attitude. It's not going to, they're going to, have to have the best attitude, hustle, do all the things, be mentally tough, to take criticism, because I'm not there to buffer that for them. I got to get them ready. So it's the days I practice with them and what I prepare them for. And then also, like I said, me going to the games and then them we reviewing what they did well, what they didn't do well. So even though I wasn't a coach on the field or on the court, I mean, I can see what's going on in practice. We can make the adjustments every step along the way, and not just at game time. So that's the stance that I took. That now I believe is working, out well. I don't want to have this belief anyway that my kid is being screwed or is being pushed aside, for daddy ball or anything like that. Here's another thing too, is that a couple of experiences, right? Just being honest, when I had these little roles, I have been biased towards my kid. I remember, it was a championship game, and in these leagues, it's supposed to be exactly fair, how you substitute. And it was at the very end of a basketball game, and I know my son Jace was the guy who had stopped their ace player. It was the championship game. We went through all of this, came down to the end, and I fudged on the substitution so that my son could go in there and shut the person down. So, look, raising my hand, I don't know. I never got negative feedback from the parents. It wasn't really a long period of time, but I fudged. It was daddy ball. It was bad coaching as far as the rules are concerned, I guess, depending on who look at it. Like I said, never got any negative feedback from the parents. But look, I'm being honest here, right? And when you're a coach too, you got to make those decisions. Are you always going to just go directly by line like it said, win or lose, right? Because part of the experience for the kids, especially as they get older, they want to play hard. They want to have an attitude. They want to get the confidence of personal development. But winning and being well coached is kind of your responsibility. You got to be well coached for these parents, too, right? So that was one where I raised my hand, and if I would have been open to criticism, I would have deserved it. Okay, but there was one other again that we're helping out where I had my son and daughter on a flag football team. And, man, we made a championship run, whatever. And I was criticized by one of the other parent coaches. And, his interpretation of what I was doing, it wasn't like I made a bad call, how I substituted players, how I outlined it. Because, hey, if you don't win, you can always second guess yourself. You should have had this person split the teams this way. I get all that stuff. But the intent of what he thought I was doing was I'm trying to make, not trying to win the game. Like that was, I guess, supposedly secondary to me. My biggest thing was win or lose. I was trying to make my two kids look good. And anyway, like I said, I understand he's always going to be up to someone's interpretation, right? So, and that's what you're going to have to do. I don't like the fact, that if that is the case, if you're a coach, how the kids, if the parents could keep it between the parents, then that would make it more palatable. But it doesn't. You can see the kids are affected by all this talk at home and the stress. I really believe they know. You know what I mean? The kids talk. My son, and I won't really get in too much, but he got in a position that had nothing to do with me. I don't have anything to do with it. All right. And one of the kids at school said, "Oh, you're on that team because of your dad." Right. So I'm not even a coach. And, other kids accusing my kid of being benefiting from daddy ball. And I'm not even the coach. I don't have anything to do with it. And you can still be accused of daddy ball. So, again, it's some things to think about. That's my opinion. I think it's worked out well, for my kids. All right. But again, if your kid gets cut from the team, or you think he's an infielder, and he gets put to the outfield, or he doesn't get to pitch as much, or whatever you think, right? You have no control if you're not a coach. I guess you could talk to the coach if you're really, diplomatic and and influential that way, I guess. But if you did volunteer coach, you'd really have, as one friend who I have, and he coaches, and he's very honest. He says, My dad never had a seat at the table. And it's important to me that I have a seat at the table for all these decisions. So I respect that. Again, it's what decisions you're going to make. But again, at the young level, I know you're serious about your own child's development, or you wouldn't be listening to this podcast, right? But, in general, just having a parent to volunteer, whether they're good or they're bad or somewhere in between, whether they have sons or daughters on the team and they favor them a lot. Many times, if you're the coach of your kid, you're going to be too tough on them. You're going to be too tough on them. Maybe you might not know, but you might feel the pressure. Oh, my kid, if he doesn't do well, and I'm coaching this team, if he doesn't do well, then I'm going to be accused of politics, daddy ball, and all that stuff. And so you may be too hard on your kid because of that pressure that you feel, whether you realize it or not. All right? It's easy to say, oh, I'm too easy on my kid, or I give my kid all the best positions and all the breaks because I'm biased and I'm really playing daddy ball. It's easy for someone to say, but you might be too hard on them, making the stress that you're feeling from all those politics that you volunteered for, right? And it's passed along to your kids. Or this is one thing, that I see a lot too, is that person's son or daughter is really the best player and the best person for that position. But if they're going to err, they're going to err on not favoring their kid so they don't appear to be biased or playing daddy ball. And that's not right either. That's not right either. And again, we're not always so rational in the decisions. We're not as objective as we might think. So if you were, favoring your kid, you might know it. But often you're too tough on your kid, and he's the first one to go out just so he don't appear. You might not know all that either. Right? How is it for the kid? They may say they want you out there, right? But that might put too much pressure on them, right? How about this? Maybe your kid doesn't pay attention, or he doesn't hustle as much as they should because you're the coach. Who knows? They could hustle more and pay attention more. I guess that's hope when you're the coach. All right. Look, if you look at a lot of the star athletes, when they talk about their childhoods, many of them, most of them, I would guess, I didn't really take a poll, that their dads coach them. And it's usually because they're the most serious. Here's the thing I understand is that if you know the game, and it's important for your kid to get a great experience, and you're qualified, and you'll say, look, I may have to deal with this daddy ball stuff or this politics from the parents, but I don't care. I'm the most qualified person to give my kid, but this whole team a best experience. So if I deal with that, fine. I'm the best guy for it too, right? Again, that's just some things that you need to consider when you do this. Now, I'll just say this, as I kind of threw all this stuff out there, because, like I said, my brother's older. He had his kids. My brother's a great guy, and I know my brother well enough. Now, I wasn't around. I was a bodybuilder at the time, so I didn't necessarily go to a lot of games. And even if he spoke about that experience, I don't know how much I could have related to what he's saying. But he's a good guy, and if I would have to guess, he would err on the side of shortchanging his own kids. That's my opinion. All right. And so, now that, I became into this, right now I'm asking him questions from his experience 15, 20 years ago. And he was talking about, the parents and all the politics. This was 20 years later. And he didn't talk a whole lot about it. He didn't show a lot of emotion, but you could tell that was a very painful part of this process. And I know my brother, I know he did a good job, and he was fair, and he was out there, and he was passionate. And it might have been to give his kids the best experience too, not exclusively. And I don't know, I'm being a little protective of my brother. I don't know what kind of pain that, he went through. And And also, to tell you the truth, that had nothing to do with my decision because I didn't really kind of understand. That's why I want to talk about this stuff before you get into it. So, you know, so it's like you're right in the middle of it. You have a chance to think about it beforehand, so when it shows up. But I know my brother, and man, I feel sorry for that. I wouldn't want to be in that pain, but who knows? Maybe you get used to it. Here's the other thing. So when I tell you is that I told you my decision that got my kids, through, the 5 to 8 year age as they're, 9 and 10 and a half now. I don't know what future is going to hold, right? This is my perspective at this stage. But you know how some things you don't know as it's later. I don't claim to know how, with perspective, when they're 15 years old, 18 years old, if that was the best decision or not. All right, so that's my thinking. Again, this podcast is really to just open a discussion, different perspective. I'm sure you have opinions going in. Maybe some of the things that I talk about validate exactly what you're thinking. And so you can move forward with more certainty and confidence. Or you totally disagree with what I'm saying, and it just made you think a little bit more about what you're doing so you could move forward with more certainty and confidence. All right, I probably could, come back around and talk about this subject more and more and talk about, there is daddy ball. There is daddy ball out there. I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt of the coaches out there that they have the best intent. But, there is daddy ball. And certain things are just, it's interesting. Like, I'll use an example is, what if your sport and you believe your kid is really great at basketball and they really have a future of all the sports they play? Maybe it's the only sport they play, right? And what if the kid is really tall, but you've been working on his dribbling and things like that, and you're only 6'1" or 6'3" or whatever. Your kid may be taller now on the little 5-6-year-old team or 8-year-old team, but that he may never get to 6'3", and 6'3" is kind of small at the higher levels. So you're having him dribble and play what a guard would be, right? And if you're the coach, it's your kid, and you got a plan for him, and he's worked on his dribbling, why wouldn't he be the point guard or the off guard or do a lot of dribbling and breaking the press, especially if he's the best, player to do that? Now, this isn't my particular case. I'm just saying, right? Well, again, if the game of basketball, it's sort of changing. But how it would be traditionally, if your kid is tall at these younger ages, they would play center or forward. And you'd have the little kids, and there's going to be a lot of little kids, and a lot of little kids can dribble. They would be the guards. You would naturally have the little kids who can dribble or kind of dribble be the guard. And if your kid is taller or the tallest, they would be forwards and centers. Well, guess what? At this level, they're never going to really get the ball because they can't pass. They can't, very rarely, or they get the guards, especially if your kid is a lot better and can do this, they're not, just because they're small doesn't mean they can dribble. All right? And so your son may never even get the ball, or certainly a lot less, but they could be the better guard and get the ball, right? And have the ball most time, and it'd be best for the team. It's just, and you did the work, right? It's not, but that's not maybe how it'll be seen. Well, look at his kid. He's tall. He should be the center or the forward. And he's making him point guard, right? That is daddy ball. That is bias. That is setting up the system to fulfill your needs and your kid's needs. I mean, that's just what it is. All right? Hopefully, like I said, if your kid is good enough, it will prove to be the right decision, but you're going out on a limb because what if your kid doesn't perform? What if it looks odd? What if the parents, they're biased to their kids and you're doing something unconventional by having the tall kid be the point guard? But you don't want to not have your kid be the point guard either if he's the best, right? So there's always these decisions that are going to affect your kid. It's going to affect the parents, the team, the chemistry, your experience as a coach, what you feel about it, right? And again, this is the biggest thing is all this mess that the adults are the ones that have their opinions and create it. Is it gonna drip down to your kids? You know, where they got to take on this stress because their daddy volunteered to be the coach, their mommy volunteered the coach. You know? And what if you don't have a star kid and he's middle of the road and he gets a pitch or he gets play or he gets to play point guard or whatever? Might he always doubt the fact, well, you know, if my dad wasn't the coach, would I be playing? And make him doubt himself. I don't know. A lot of things to think about. I think that in this podcast, I'm probably raising more questions than I'm giving answers. All right. But I hope that's helpful just having the discussion. All right. So that's going to do it for this Coach Your Kids Right podcast. Thanks for joining me. Hey, leave your comments. Reach out to me if you have any specific questions or if you want to speed up this process. Just entering this. You want to know how it all works. Give some structured systems and patterns and decisions on how you're going to go about it, right? Simplify the process with all of these things to think about. Reach out to me. I do one-on-one coaching for parents just like you. All right. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.